Hi, everybody. Welcome to the National Down Syndrome Society's webinar series. My name is Vanessa Quick. I'm the Director of Programming and Community Relations here at the National Down Syndrome Society. And we've got what we consider one of our hot topics today, inclusion through innovation, with Sean Smith of the University of Kansas. Before I turn it over to Sean, let me tell you a few things. All of those of you on the webinar right now, live, will be muted throughout the duration. If you have any questions, however, at any point, type them in to the box on your screen. We'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar and hopefully be able to get to them all. So please go ahead and do that. Also, this is being recorded and will be posted on the National Down Syndrome Society's website following the webinar. So please feel free to check back on ndss.org for that and to share it with anybody who might be interested. So without further ado, Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. Let me change presenter, give you the controls here.
Great.
Sean, going to take it away? All right, there we go. I can see your slides.
And I'm going to get rid of this go to meeting here, so get that off to the side. All right, well, good morning, everybody, or excuse me, good afternoon. As Vanessa shared, my name is Sean Smith, and I should be able to minimize this here, so I don't want to get myself out of it. I don't want to do that, so I'll put it over here. There we go. So my name is Sean Smith. I'm a faculty member at the University of Kansas, and welcome. Looking forward to this next hour, and I'm trying to engage us as much as possible. I've done a number of webinars, and I know part of it's I'm sitting watching. Well, I'm trying to have you do a little bit more than just sit and watch. And we'll get started right away. As we get started, I do want to clarify a little bit more about the many hats I wear, because I know many of you wear hats as well in terms of the different roles and responsibilities. So as a faculty member here at the Department of Special Education at the University of Kansas, I'm engaged with a lot of different teacher development, work with a lot of teachers, related service personnel, also engaged with research. I could talk to you about, we have a center on online learning and students with disabilities, virtual reality, can go on and on and on. But another hat I wear is a parent. My wife and our parents have 4 children, 4 school-age children. We have 3 high schoolers, and so I come from a context of a parent, but particularly, so we have a 12th grader, and I'm not sure if any of you have teenage girls, but I have a teenage daughter who's not in theater. She doesn't do theater at all, but she's that drama queen. I'm not sure if you connect with that, but definitely living that. And then we have a 10th grader, Nolan, and you'll learn a little bit about Nolan because he's an individual with Down syndrome. I've learned a lot through Nolan. I continue to learn a lot through Nolan. And then we have JJ, a freshman in high school, and then Mara, a 6th grader. So you'll be hearing it from the professional perspective, but also from the parent perspective. Now, before we leave this slide, I want to make you aware of a resource I've created for this webinar. There's the Google, actually it's a Google shortener URL. I'm going to click on that, and you'll find that that QR code and the URL, and I'll go back to that in just a second, takes you to a website. It's simply a Google Doc. And on the Google Doc, and I'll actually come back here during the presentation, I've linked to the actual presentation. It's a Google presentation, so it's simply there, sitting there for your access. And then I have a variety of different resources that I'll be talking about. Like we'll be talking about apps before we finish, and I'll come back to this website at that point. But this is here. It's for you. It's for your view to use as you wish, and hopefully it will be helpful as you go along. The QR code is something that I love. It's a simple technology. It's kind of really where I want to go with this conversation about technology and innovation as it aligns to inclusion. And it's a simple idea, and honestly, we're going to talk about a number of different things today. We're going to talk about how we frame the technology, apps, and things along those lines. But let me start back with that QR code. And the QR code to me is a simple technology that leads to inclusion. And you know what? Before I tell you my story, I'm going to have a young lady tell you about what QR codes are all about. And here she is. I'm going to disconnect from my audio right now, so you guys hopefully will be able to hear her loud and clear. And so here she is. She's going to introduce QR codes.
We've got some websites that we visit often, and they're bookmarked, but people forget where they're bookmarked. So then people just try to go on Google, but then they forget how to spell them. So then we decided with the shortcut, QR codes. So this is how you do it. Now I'm just trying to find the QR code thing, and there it is. You just click on it simply, and then you hold it up in front of this little camera thing until it recognizes it. So, now it's recognized it. You click on it, and there I am. Wow, QR code crazy.
All right. So I think she did a little bit better job than I did in terms of the QR code crazy. But, let me tell you a story. The first time I saw QR codes, and they're really simple to make, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But the first time I saw QR codes being used, it was in an elementary school. I want to say it was third grade. And they were third or fourth grade, and they were going to do Charlotte's Web. And the English language arts class was going to do Charlotte's Web for the next 3 or 4 weeks. They were going to read it. They were going to go through the different elements of it, and I think they were going to finish up watching the movie. Now, this elementary school did a bit of a middle school approach, and that is, so what English language arts was doing, science wanted to complement. So science was going to focus on the ecology of the farm. Social studies was going to talk about the history at the time of the county fair and all those elements that's in Charlotte's Web as well. And math, well, who knows what math does? No, I'm kidding. But math, they weren't necessarily aligned. What I'm bringing this up, though, is the fact that for a child that has reading challenges, or for Nolan, for goodness sake, that was at the third or fourth grade, who was very much a non-reader, for that child, basically the next 3 to 4 weeks to be meaningfully included in 3 of those classes at the elementary level, they really needed to understand the background of Charlotte's Web. They needed to be participating in that context. Otherwise, what they were doing in science, what they were doing in social studies, and of course what they were doing in English language arts would be very limited for the individual. So the first 2 days, without even opening Charlotte's Web, the class had QR codes throughout the classroom. And they were literally, as this young lady has, they were just on sheets of paper, and they were put up against the wall. They were all over the wall. They were just simply taped. And students used the old iPad 2, the first one with the camera, and old iPods. And they were running around the room, literally for 2 days, running around the room, and grabbing the QR code, which took them to websites. It took them to video, it took them to audio, it took them to pictures, and they were introduced to all the characters. They were introduced to the various scenes. They were introduced to the storyline. They were introduced to elements about, like, for example, Templeton the rat. They learned a lot about rats because, of course, Templeton collects all that stuff. Well, they learned that rats collect that. I mean, the video that will not get out of my mind, just horrible, is the video. Remember, Charlotte has all her babies at the end, and they all go everywhere. Well, there's a video of that where spiders are actually born, and there's, thousands of little spiders hatching, and there's a video of that. So basically, without reading a word, without opening the book, every single student had a really good understanding of the characters, what those characters meant, what a pig is, what a runt of the litter is. Within the 3rd page, they're trying to kill off Wilbur. How come? And so the non-reader, great. The reader, excellent. The individual that's already read the book, well, that was a great review. And they can go on and on and on. Now, since I've mentioned QR codes, I'm just going to take you to, if you notice, I'm back to our Google Doc, and I have a variety of resources here about QR codes. But I'll let you take a look at those a little bit later. But since I've mentioned it to you, I'm just simply going to go to QR code, and I'm not even going to type it well. It's going to pop right up. I can go to a site, and this is one. It's simply called qrstuff.com. It's one I have of several links, okay? And I'm going to move this over here just a bit. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so it fits on the screen. And I'm going to go back up to my tab here, and I'm going to grab, if you've noticed, at the very top here, I'm grabbing that Google Doc, that long URL. That's probably about, 50 characters? I can't remember that, nor can I share that out. I'm simply going to copy that. I simply went up and copied it. I'm going to go over to my QR code generator, and where it says website URL, I'm going to paste it. And what I want you to do is notice over here where it says QR code preview. watch the QR code. It's going to change. So I'm going to go up under here. I'm going to paste it in. There it is. It's a new QR code. And that's it. So that's all I need to do. I simply download it. I click on download. It downloads. I open it up, and there it is. And I could copy it and open up a Word document. Actually, I'll do that right now. There you go. I'll paste it in there, and now I can put it anywhere I want. And if you noticed with the QR code, I can change all sorts of different colors. So colors of the rainbow. So it's really easy to make. And by the way, I've been using websites. Oops. But if you take a look, there's a whole host of things. I can actually generate a QR code for a Twitter feed, for a Facebook, for a LinkedIn, for a website, for a Skype call, for a Dropbox. So these tools that students could use depending upon how you're having information. Generally, I use it for images or PDF files, so students aren't having to type in anything or remember anything. They can quickly go to it. All right, so real easy idea, and hopefully through my story you give a sense of how that individual is included due to the fact that they were able to quickly use the QR codes, not have to type anything in, and be introduced to Charlotte's Web. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we know and where we're going here with the technology and innovation. I know many of us are probably have various technologies available to us. Now, this is my son Nolan a few years ago in the Kansas Nutcracker. He was a mouse. That's a whole other story. It's another day. But the reason I put it up here is that when we generally think about technology, and where I want to take you to is I want you to think about technology, what we know about the technology, and how we can enhance our inclusion. In my example, QR codes was a simple example. We'll get deeper in just a moment. But as we get started here, we know so much about our sons and daughters. We know so much about the students we work with. We know so much about the adults we work with in terms of these individuals. And of course, I'm focused on Down syndrome, but I'd argue we know a lot about our learners in general. Generally, we're not applying what we know to that technology connection. Instead, we know a lot about apps, or we heard about this app, or we heard about this technology, or we want to use this tablet, or the school that my child is in just went one-to-one with iPad, so now how am I going to use it? And we tend not to connect what we know about the child to the various technology. As we're going along today, I want us to think about that. And I'd argue that if we really focus in on what we know about the child, we will be able to narrow down and connect the dots to the technology the child needs. Now, this is a visual of something called the SET framework: student, environment, technology, tools, and tasks, or tasks and tools, all about performance there in the middle. Now, the reason I bring this up is that I know a lot about Nolan. I know a lot about his needs. And so, therefore, I'm very aware of what I'm trying to do in a certain environment. I'm very aware of the tasks we're trying to achieve, but I may not know the tools that need to get there. And so, there are a variety of different ways to narrow that down. And to me, by narrowing it down, we'll be able to enhance then what we use for the inclusionary aspect. And I'll give you some examples here in just a second. Now, with that thought in mind, in that knowing your child and kind of connecting the dots between the child and the technology, I want you to be aware there's a variety of resources available to us for free that are being used in our schools today or potentially underused in our schools today. And let me give you a few examples, okay? And I'm going to skip through that because of time. But there's something called the Protocol for Accommodations in Reading. It's the PAR. The PAR actually allows us to take the individual, connect it to what we know about the child and their reading ability or their limited reading ability, and then the question mark it answers is connections to potential technology solutions. So it takes, again, what we know about the individual, what we know about the individual in respect to reading in terms of assessment, and then ties it to, oh, we need to fill in here when it comes to technology. Now, actually, I'm going to put this back up here for just a second because I want you to be aware of the technology, but also as we go along, this is one way I wanted you guys to be a little bit more engaged. So I'll slow down here and make sure I connect here. And that is, I'd love for you folks to share a little bit about the types of technologies you're potentially using right now, or at least what you know about, gosh, this is my son or daughter, this is my Nolan, and I'm trying to connect the dots between what Nolan is having difficulty doing the following, and we don't have a solution right now. That's where we want to get to, because then, of course, we can start connecting to that technology. Now, I put this up here, and I'll put this up here in just a moment again. If you want to write that down, it's simply the website GOO, no www, that's goo.gl, and /k, that's a lowercase k, uppercase G, uppercase O, lowercase q, uppercase Z, 5. So if you want to write that down, that's going to take you to a place called Padlet. It's free. I love Padlets. And what I'd love for you to do while you're listening here is to go ahead and double-click, and you can simply double-click. If you have access to your screen, you should be able to watch GoToMeeting and also have access to your screen here. And you could simply, I'm going to give you Nolan, and Nolan has difficulties in reading. So he's problems in reading. Okay. Now, you'll understand, the reason I'm asking this right now is just to kind of brainstorm a little bit as you go along, because I think the more we, again, reflect on what we know about our child or the children we're working with, the more connection we can have with the technology. I often find what folks do is they say, well, this is what I know about the individual, and then, oh, here are the apps that we're asking to use, and they don't make that connection. I know it sounds really simplistic, and yet we tend not to do it. Let me bring it home a little bit more with some examples. Okay. Oh, and by the way, just another technology just to be aware of. This GUI, this actually is this website Padlet, and instead of typing in Padlet.com, wall, etc., you can go to something called Google Shortener. So you go to Google Shortener. It's free. You can type in any website you have, and it will shorten it for you into simply goo.gl, and it'll give you 6 characters. So I'm simply going to do that and go to a new website, and notice it went right to Padlet. I pasted in the goo 6WB60Z, and it takes me right to Padlet. So FYI, that's called Google Shortener. It's free. Any URL you have, it will reduce it down to goo.gl and then 6 new characters. Yeah, I'm just, okay, I'll get focused here, folks. I know. You're like, Sean, come on, move on. All right, great. So one resource we have is a PAR. Another resource, there's several others. I have them all right at the beginning of our Google Doc. Actually, I think page 3 or 4 in our Google Doc. And these are various other technologies, tools that exist to narrow down what we know about our child. So for example, Texas has a 4-step model that takes what we know about your child to tie it to technology. The Wisconsin Assistive Technology Initiative, WADI, does the same thing. The Fiat does the same thing. There's something out of Georgia that does something similar. There's several books on this. And the whole idea is, this is what I know about the individual I'm working with, and these are where they have in terms of needs, task-wise, and now we can narrow it down to, oh, we're looking for a technology that relates to that. I'll give some examples as we get into the technology ones as we move along. All right. Now, there's another resource called the Quality Indicators for Assistive Technology. I'm talking a lot about technology here, not just assistive, but I want you to be aware that there are, and there's several different indicators, everything for the IEP, for the professional, for the parent, for the leader, the administrator in the building. There are quality indicators to determine whether or not we're ready for AT. And these are free indicators. I have a link there off the Google Doc for you to be aware of. So these are things that are there for us to make those connections when we're trying to say, I know what my potential child needs, I just don't know the technology element, or we're trying to get the technology integrated. How do we go about do that? Don't reinvent the wheel. There's many resources available, and the Quiet is one, as well as the other resources I just mentioned, as well as the Center on Technology and Disability. If you're unfamiliar with this, it's federally funded, and the whole idea is assistive and instructional technology to support learners with disabilities. This is very school-focused, pre-K through basically graduation or the end of school up to through 21, and they have a host of resources. So for example, here's just a screenshot of some of the resources they have, everything from basically advocacy and awareness to planning to tying the IP process to technology. They do webinars, like we're doing a webinar here on a variety of things. When I screenshotted this, Beth Post was going to do one on using mobile apps for children's birth to 8. Disability focus, so a host of resources here to also tie that technology into individuals with disabilities. So a number of things out there. I wanted to make you aware, let your fingers do the walking when you have a chance. All right, so with that said, as we get into the technologies, we need to, as I've said multiple times now, think about the learner, think about the strengths of the learner, think about the needs of the learner, think about the tasks and the environment, then we get to the tool. but we also need to be aware of some of the barriers that are in front of the learners we're working with. And one barrier that I see with my own son is the curriculum. So Nolan is in the general education classroom. Fortunately, he's in the general education classroom at 10th grade for social studies, English language arts, and science. Math is a significant challenge. He is definitely reading well below grade level, and he's not covering everything. But there's barriers, but he is included, and he's included with support. But there's barriers within that curriculum that we need to be aware of, because if we don't recognize those barriers, we're not going to be successful in the inclusion. Instead, Nolan, as a 10th grader with Down syndrome, would be put into adaptive or functional program. And let me give you an example here of barriers. I'm grabbing this from How Difficult Can This Be? Now take a look at this if you would. And sadly, I can't ask you if you guys know what this looks like, but I'm going to go with the assumption that many of you do not know what this is. Although you all know what it is. You've all seen this. It's just looking at this picture, you may not be able to decipher what actually is in this picture. It's a bit challenging. The idea, though, the reason I'm sharing this is the idea that oftentimes we'll go into instructional experiences where, especially from a teacher perspective, we may assume that the individual, oh, they got it, they understand it, no worries. So, for example, I assigned some reading the day before. So you're going to take a look at some of this reading, you come into class, and in class we're going to do a lot of hands-on activities. We're going to do small group, we're going to do large group, we're going to do some small presentations. It's very interactive. But the reality is, if you're going to participate in a meaningful way, if you're going to be included in a meaningful way, you better understand what this picture is. You better, or my example is, you better understand what the reading said. But if I'm a slow reader or a non-reader, I come into that class, nope, that's a barrier. I don't have that background, so everything you do in class with me, I'm a bit lost at. I'm lost. I can't make that connection. So it is upon us to make sure that if I ask you to read, and that's a barrier, I better provide that material in a variety of different ways. So that's one way, to me, technology leads to inclusion. So instead of reading, how else am I going to provide that material so you understand it? And we all know that saying, about 3rd grade, we switched from learning to read to reading to learn. So, you know, basically elementary, middle, secondary, we're now switching in gears where the expectation is, in order for you to participate, you better understand what you've read. And if I have Down syndrome, highly likely I'm not reading at grade level, let alone I may not even be reading. So what are you going to do? So here we go. So folks, this is a cow. This is a cow, and the cow is actually looking at you. Now some of you are like, oh, of course, I saw that. And others of you are like, what? Let me give you an example. So there's the outline. There's the ears. There's the nose. Okay, you see it a little bit now? There's a cow looking at you. There's a cow. Okay. And the whole idea here is I'm recognizing there's a barrier, and therefore I'm going to try to address that barrier, and I'm going to lead through technology. So some of you may have heard about it, but I'm going to frame it in this idea of universal design for learning. Now, universal design for learning takes into consideration that there are barriers and that individuals learn differently, a lot of variability, disability or not disability. But I'm going to take upon this for individuals with Down syndrome, and as you're reading this cartoon, you'll see there's a ramp there, and there's a young man in a wheelchair saying, please shovel the ramp. The man shoveling the stairs says, let me get the stairs first, and then the rest of the kids can come up, and they'll get the ramp for you. And of course, the young man in the wheelchair is saying, well, clear the ramp, everyone can get in there. And that's the essence of universal design for learning. I'm going to think about instructional ways, particularly through technology, that will open up doors for all learners that will allow for further inclusion. And I'll give you some technology examples here in just a second. So universal design for learning itself is based on 3 ideas. And the 3 ideas basically is principle 1, provide things in multiple ways. And I'm going to go into reading here in just a second, and we'll get into some examples there. Number 2, allow me to demonstrate what I know in a variety of different ways, or multiple means of action and expression. And number 3, make sure you engage me. Engage me in the why of learning. If you do that and allow the what of learning to be represented and the how of learning for me to demonstrate in a variety of ways, you're going to go a long way with me. And universal design for learning is a concept, a framework that's out there nationally. And it's something that I use. It's kind of like my colored lenses. I use that to look at anything. I put my UDL lenses on to say this is how I look at the world and how I look at various technologies. So let's go ahead and I can't explain everything. It's a great app, and I will mention apps, but I'm going to give some examples. And since I'm on my computer, I'll give some examples off the computer. But explain everything to me, It's an interactive whiteboard app that is worth taking a look at, explaineverything.com. It's widely out there on tablets as well as Chromebooks, and it offers a lot of alignment to align an individual from a universal design for learning perspective as well as connecting to what they can do. It's a good example. But let me give you an example of something else that's available. It's free, easy to use, and that's Google. So Google Docs, I like Google Docs. They're free. No one uses Google Docs regularly, and Google Drive, and he uses it for us to share information and for us not to lose information. So for example, we use Google Drive where we put information up and then the teacher puts information up, and Nolan's not the best typist, but he uses something called Co-Writer to be able to assist in his writing. I'm going to give you an example of that here in just a second. But with Google Docs, as an example here, take a look up under, so I can type, right? I can type here, right? But then up under Tools, something that was developed that Nolan is actually beginning to use. Now, the example here for me is it's simply an example of, okay, this is a technology. It aligns with the idea of it's available. It's designed to allow me to demonstrate what I know beyond just writing. And let me give you an example of how it works. So I can now, Nolan's using it, although his articulation and fluency is definitely limited. And I know for nonverbal individuals that some of us may be working with or children, that's not going to connect. But bear with me as one example, and then I'll give a variety of others. But here you go. I simply go up under Tools, up under Google Doc. I select the voice typing tool. It's on. It's free. I can use this across tablets. I can use this on my phone. I can use this on my computer. I simply click to speak. Now, as I start to talk, it will start to type, period. As I move through, it is not perfect, but it generally will correct what I say as I move along, period. Again, it's not perfect, period. Now, some of you are saying, Sean, there's mistakes. Look at the mistakes. I look at this saying, I am not using a microphone. I have not taught it a lick about what I'm saying, and yet there it is, typing out pretty decently. So Nolan will use it to generate basic vocabulary terms, basic definitions of what he's thinking. And it will be very basic. He will have to enunciate and pronounce, which is really good because he works with his SLP for that. But what he's taking is, he's taking the typing out of it, which is a huge challenge for him. And he's able to focus in not on the typing, the cognitive demand of that, because that's a challenge. Instead, he's able to focus on what he wants to say. Now, this isn't his primary way because he generally won't type or use text this way. He generally will present other ways, and I'll share that in just a moment. But this is just one of several. These are simple tools. They're aligned with Universal Design for Learning. To me, it's multiple means of demonstrating what I know. It's free, easy to use. Let's move on. Okay. So another tool, free, and I have it on the PowerPoint, but it's something called Poplet. Oh, not Pooplet, Poplet. Poplet is free. It's an app. It's also available on the computer. I'm running off of my computer. Now, it's free. For educators, there's a certain levels and all that, but let me give you the gist of it, okay? So Poplet itself basically allows me, and I'm sharing this to kind of give you, why is it taking so long? I'm sharing this just to kind of give you an idea of the variations when I start thinking about the individual and what they need. I'm not sure why it's taking so long. Hold on. Well, here, I don't have to worry about logging in. Let's just try it out. Poplet allows me, it's taking its time. It's just simply double click to make a Poplet. Great. So if I want, so Nolan wants to share what he knows. Yes, he could use that Google tool, but that's a bit of a challenge potentially for some. So here he just double clicks and simply can type whatever he wants. And you're right, he doesn't have the spell check and all that. But then he can come up here and change for organization purposes, color and all that. But he can also go and grab images. So he can go into his library and grab pictures. I'm not sure what this picture is, but let's just grab it. There you go. So there's Nolan, his grandparents' burial site. So you could do that. You can actually add video. So I could grab in, go and grab in YouTube or Vimeo, which is similar to YouTube. I can grab in video. I can grab in images. I can grab in text. I could audio record this as well. And then I simply keep adding. So I could add here, I could add here, and then of course it allows me to move it along, make it smaller, make it bigger. And so now I could interconnect these as well with these ideas. So now here I am sharing what I know, organizing ideas, taking notes. So again, it's an inexpensive app. It's available via the tablet. It's available via the computer a number of different ways. Okay, let me get it a little bit more structured. So what I wanted to do a moment ago was to say, okay, here's this idea of connecting the technologies. Here's this idea of universal design for learning. I think of things in terms of a framework. Poplet allows me to add in images, allows me to add in audio, allows me to draw, allows me to type. So there's a lot of different things I can do there. And as you can see from this visual, I can make connections. So a lot of power behind what it allows me to do. Fine, but let's get a little bit more focused. Let's get focused to reading. So let's walk through the fact that, okay, I have a struggling reader. And so as you know, reading itself has 5 different components. And so right now, Nolan particularly is on the vocabulary fluency and reading comprehension. Even though phonemic awareness and phonics are still a challenge, right now his area is more vocabulary fluency and reading comprehension. Well, let's think about these different areas of reading, and let's think about the technologies that are there to help us support that will further include us. Now this is an image, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through these very quickly, and then I'm going to go back to the web and share these, okay? So let me give you a couple ideas, and then I'll go back to the web and share these. This is a screenshot of something called Tar Heel Reader. Tar Heel Reader is free. It's great. It basically is a digital book that offers you a picture and text. And of course, tablets, computers, and phones will automatically read the text. And I'll give you an example of that here in just a second. Tar Heel Reader is free and probably has over 4,000 books for free. All right, and just to give you an example real quick, because you may say, Sean, this is really simple. Oh, and by the way, Tar Heel Reader, any book that someone's created, you could take, save, and create it into an iBook. And so then you could read it off your tablet. But just before I leave Tar Heel Reader, Christmas wasn't too far away. So it didn't happen this year. It happened several years ago. But we go out and cut our own Christmas tree. And there's 4 of us, well, there's 6 of us all total with my wife and the children. And so we go out to a farm, and you get on a flatbed, and there's hay, and they drive you out to where the Christmas trees are, and you get to select it. And the best thing here is then there's 4-H students there that they cut it down for you. They pick it up, and they do all the heavy work, which is great. But anyways, we were out there one year, and it was cold, and it was windy. It was probably about 10 degrees. It was the day we had selected to go, so we were going to go. And it was just, oh, it was horrible. And so, of course, we were just trying to get the first tree we wanted, but of course there's 6 of us, and there's always, discussion. But anyways, I'm trying to basically find the first tree. Let's get it cut. Let's get back into the car. And here's Nolan behind us walking along. Bridget's off to the side arguing about this tree. I think Mom and Ma are over there arguing about another. And Nolan's telling me the history, the dramatic and Victorian history elements of the Christmas tree. He's using all sorts of vocabulary I've never heard him use. And he's telling me this rich history about the evergreen and its symbolism for the Christian elements of Christ. It was, where are you pulling this from, young man? And sure enough, he had read several books on Tar Heel Reader with pictures and simple sentences, and he was able to get all this information. So my example is simply the richness of something like this. So Tar Heel Reader is one. Now, for those of us that are app-based, although I'm not running my iPad right now, Pictello is phenomenal. Many of us use it. It's great for social narratives. It's great for interactive books. Pictello is also great for sequencing stories that an individual might want to say and tell instead of an essay. Nolan will create a number of story books, and he's been doing it for years. He started this off with PowerPoint, where instead of writing an essay, he will share a story with pictures and text to share what he knows. So it's pretty powerful, and we'll talk about that here as we go along. Stories to Learn is another app. This is a free app. Pictello is, I think, about $20. Stories to Learn, really basic. It allows you to add stories, text, images. Pictello allows you to add images, text, audio. It automatically has a text-to-speech reader. For example, dogs here in this image is highlighted in green because as it reads, it will highlight the actual word. It's a pretty powerful tool, and I'll talk about highlighting words here in just a second. There's something called Book Builder, and I'll share this in a moment as well. Book Builder is like Tar Heel Reader, but beyond. It's free, it's online, so you can access it via your tablet, access it via the computer. You can create your own book. You can have people create books for you, and it has tools to support that reading process. Bookshare is another popular area. This has probably over about, I think, 500,000 resources right now. We'll go to it in just a moment. It's an app as well as a website that basically gives you digital text for free. If you're a child with a disability that is eligible for it, and in all honesty, with the parameters for this, any child with Down syndrome, in my opinion, it has a print disability, and therefore, because of the print disability, they would be eligible for this, but that's Bookshare. All right, and of course, there's iBook and elements of that. There's text-to-speech readers. I'll share that here in just a moment. And then increasingly, and I'm going to share a video of this, there's other tools, and actually, you know what, I'll come back to this video because I want to share a few things with you. So first of all, let's go to Tar Heel Reader, because the last one I wanted to share with you gets us even beyond that. So Tar Heel Reader, again, it's free, and I'm simply going to find a book. So I'm going to click under Finding a Book, and I'm going to say, what elephants use their trunks? And so basically, here's the text, here's the image, and then I click on Next. And so all I do as a user is identify images and type in the text, and Tar Heel Reader will create the rest. And so I can go next, and of course it will read to me, and I'm going to show you the reading function here in just a second with something else. But there you go. All right, so we have that available to us. Actually, here, I'll go ahead and show it to you right now. So there are a number of different apps, and this is an app, although I'm on my computer, it's a Chrome app. So I'm in my Chrome browser. It's working as a Chrome app. It's called Read Write for Google Chrome. There's a number of apps I use for that. And I'll simply highlight the text, okay? And I'll simply then press play, and I'm going to take my mic off here.
Elephants have very long trunks. Back next.
So this tool was created to read everything. So those back and next were read because those are toolbars that are there, and it has text behind it. And so it will read it out loud, and that's probably an individual who's more visually limited. So as you noticed here, I'm going to do it one more time. As you notice, it highlights each word.
Elephants have very long trunks. Back next.
If I'm looking for something for Nolan or for any individual with Down syndrome, in all honesty, I want to make sure I have text that is highlighted when it's read. Almost any tablet or almost any computer will read text. It may not highlight it. So you want to make sure you're using something like Read Write Gold, which is free. It's free. Read Write for Google Chrome is free, and it will read any text that you have. So I could go to USA Today, I could go to New York Times, I could go to the ABCs. It will read it as long as I highlight it and move along. So that's Tar Heel Reader. So very simple, and again, as I mentioned, Tar Heel Reader will also move over to the iBook. So I'm going to go ahead and move that back here, and I'm going to go to something, as I mentioned before, called Book Builder. So Book Builder is free. It's available off the web, so therefore any place you have access to the web, you can take a look at it. And let me share with you, I'm going to share with you a brief model book. There's a lot of text here. I know it's pretty crazy, but this is a pre-K book. Okay, so this book was created by I don't know whom. Actually, it was illustrated by Melissa Henry, but who actually created the book, I don't know. So I'm going to simply go to page 2, and I want to share with you what's available to you. So first of all, I can highlight the text, and it can read to me right up here where I have my mouse, and that I press play, and it will speak the current selection, which is great. It's just like Tar Heel Reader. Book Builder is like Tar Heel Reader in that you create the book. Now, Sean, why would I want to create the book? Well, back for inclusion, Nolan had to read Flat Stanley for 3rd grade. And for those of us that know Flat Stanley isn't just reading the book. It's creating your own flat person. It's sending that flat person to friends and neighbors and relatives throughout the country. It's getting it back. It's doing a presentation. Flat Stanley turned into about a 3-month experience. And if Nolan didn't read Flat Stanley or couldn't understand Flat Stanley, limitations. So we literally created a version of Flat Stanley. Actually, at the time, we used PowerPoint, and then we moved it over to Book Builder. But it was a limited version of the sentences. It wasn't the same amount of words. We used images from Flat Stanley, and then Nolan was able to read it with the supports, the digital supports to understand it. So Book Builder offers everything Tar Heel Reader did, a variation of a book that you want to create, but it also offers that you can record your own audio voice. So for example, here you go.
It was noon in the rainforest. Gus the gecko was hungry.
So you can see here what they've done is they simply have audio recorded it, so whoever put this up used their own voice. And then the other element that Book Builder offers, and again, this is just one of many examples. I've shared with you some apps that do this, and there's a whole list of apps for reading supports on the Google Doc. But take a look at Monty down here, or Haley or Pedro. Let's take a look at Monty.
The gecko looks like a lizard that is green, small, and lives in trees or on plants. It's sunny in the picture. I think the gecko lizard lives in sunny places.
Don't get lost with the voice. What you're doing here is that in part of the Book Builder is you can create the book, but then you can type in any text you want, so you could have it very limited or whatever, that turns into prompts for the reader. So every page, and let me go to the next page here, I create a book. Every page will have, there's my image, here's my text, here's my audio, but then Monty will say something different. So for example, I've created a number of books where Monty is always talking about the picture, so that student learns to click on Monty to learn about the picture. Haley could be telling us what the picture means in respect to the text. Pedro could be telling me a strategy. It's all to take that technology. It's not just simply to read it out loud from a text-to-speech, but rather now let's engage some strategies that we know that work with reading. Now the last thing I want to share with you that I mentioned a moment ago is Bookshare. So Bookshare is simply digital text. So I'm showing you a variation of things. So I'll just simply sign in here real quick. And again, this is Nolan's account. And here we go, the BFG. So the BFG, many of us know that book or the movie. So they're going to download the book. And then what the book will allow me to do is automatically read it. But it's the entire book. It's not a book supplemented with images. It's not a book that's been tiered down with text. It's simply the full book. But it will highlight the text as it reads. And you can see it's taken a minute or two, so I'm going to move on if it doesn't pop up here in a second or two. The whole idea, though, is it has a whole number of books. And here, let's go back to Bookshare. Bookshare itself has, let's see, how many do they say right now? They have 513, well, they almost have 514,000. And that's a lot of e-books. And those are e-books that then you can download digitally and automatically have it read to you, and it will highlight the word as it's being read. I'm sorry I wasn't able to demonstrate that. This is an app as well as a website. You need to fill out paperwork, but it's free once you fill out that paperwork if you have a print disability. You work with your school for that. That's called Bookshare. The limitation of Bookshare is the fact that Bookshare is just digital text. And the limitation there is it hasn't changed, it hasn't scaffolded it, hasn't organized it better or anything like that. But it's still a value, something to consider. Now another tool that I'm really liking is something called Snap and Read. Now instead of demonstrating it to you, I'm going to let the video demonstrate it and we'll talk about it. This is particularly helpful for more and more digital resources. I'm finding more and more elementary, middle, and secondary resources, especially schools that are doing blended learning or one-to-one initiatives. They're using product that's online. Well, that's great, but the problem is sometimes that's not accessible. And take a look at how they work through the accessibility here.
Their text on Chromebooks, Mac, or Windows computers. Let's see how it works. Just open a website and activate Snap and Read Universal. A simple toolbar appears on the right. There are 3 buttons. The first reads accessible text. The second reads inaccessible text, including Flash websites and image-based PDFs. And the third works to bring complex text levels down. Reading accessible text. Reading text is easy. Just select the speaker icon and click where you want the reading to start.
Stonehenge, on Salisbury Plain in England.
Your next click stops the reading. Reading is made easy on most web pages. Or open a PDF of a quiz or test and have it read aloud.
Listen to 3 news reports on globalization-related topics.
Reading inaccessible text. Reading text hidden in images and Flash websites is just as easy. Simply click on the second button on the toolbar and make a box around the text you want read. Snap and Read automatically makes the text accessible and reads it aloud.
A graph can help you understand motion.
Adjusting text level. Encountering passages with complex vocabulary is no longer a stopping point. Snap and Read gives the controls to adjust the readability on the fly. Watch the complex words become more accessible instantly. Toggle between the original and modified words with a click. All of these tools work across websites, PDFs, Google Drive, email, and more. So whether you need text...
So the idea here is that, first of all, this is an app that sits inside a browser. So it'll sit inside the Chrome browser. And so this will be on any tablet and any computer. You'd then be able to gather inaccessible text as it's shared, but also the feature I'm really liking is that it changes the text from a readability level. And increasingly more and more products are doing that. All right, I'm probably going to cut us down to, because I only have about 3 more minutes for questions, so I'm going to go into the question period just a bit because I haven't really gotten into the heart of the app element, and I do want to do that quickly. So I'm going to move through some slides here that I'm just not going to have the time for. And I kind of knew that, but I was hopeful, but I just got too long-winded. And so there are a number of apps, okay? There are a number of apps out there, and we know that. There's hundreds of thousands of apps, right? Probably over 1 million when we add in Google Play and apps for the tablet. The question is, how do we identify them and find them? I want to go back real briefly and emphasize there are tools out there that we can take what we know about our child to narrow down what our child needs in terms of tasks and tools. The SET framework and some of those other things I made reference to, I can't emphasize enough. Please utilize them. I utilize them with Nolan all the time. It should get us down to this type of answer, and that is, oh, I know that my child has trouble writing, yet they're asking my child to write. They're a poor typist, but they can't generate words. They don't have the vocabulary because they're not reading, et cetera, or they're limited reading. Well, what about word prediction? I'm using that when I type out my text messages. It seems like words pop up while I'm trying to type, and a lot of those words are exactly what I want. Wow, my son could use that. And actually, Nolan has been using word prediction for years. And that is, he starts typing a letter, and it starts giving him a list of words. And not only does he give it the list, but he can hear the word, and he can decide, is that the word I want, or this the word? Well, I know he needs it. I've done that, but the problem is I don't know how to find the app. Because I know it needs word prediction, I know it needs text-to-speech, but how do I find that app? Or what if I know that a child needs an app that basically allows them to modify stories, but also that allows them to share what they know through a storybook, through a picture and brief text, and maybe they even audio record it, or maybe they insert videos. So they know they need it, but how do you find that app? Or maybe you're working with folks that you're trying to track behavior, and you know that the behavior that you're trying to track needs to be able to be collected and needs to be shared. You want to video record some of that. So you've narrowed it down to a point where, yeah, this is what I need, but how do you find that app? And what I've provided you underneath the app Finding the Right One are a variety of resources, and I'll try to make this a little bit larger, a variety of resources, including some apps that were created to help you find apps. So therefore, instead of just going to the App Store, oh my gosh, I'm looking through hundreds of thousands of apps. Instead of going to Google, oh my gosh, I'm getting millions of hits when I type in Google. I now can use a different tool when I know what I'm looking for. You know, like I'm looking for a word prediction app, or I'm looking for a fraction app, or something along those lines. So first of all, I'm just going to highlight this one. Even though we're talking Down syndrome, this is a great app. It's called it's an app. It's called Autism Apps. And actually, it's an app you open up on your tablet or your phone, and it helps you categorize and find apps. So if you're looking for social skill apps, if you're looking for behavior apps, if you're looking for apps in math, it's narrowed things down, and it doesn't look for all the apps out there in the world. it's narrowed it down to apps aligned to individuals with autism, which of course aligns with individuals with attributes with Down syndrome. So there's one to consider. Pinterest, of course, is phenomenal, especially if you're looking for early child special need apps. Pinterest is where I go. So definitely Pinterest, FYI. But I also like Kindertown. So Kindertown allows me, I'll make this a little bit smaller now so we can see the full screen. Kindertown allows me to type in the age, so I could go age 4 to 5. It could say device, I'm looking for an iPad, or maybe I'm looking for anything, okay? It could say I'm looking for free, and I'm not sure if you've been noticing it, but it's been organizing here. And then I could look under language arts. For example, I could look under pre-reading. And so now it's looking pre-reading, ages 4 to 5, for the iPad, for free. And it's giving me 13 apps. Now, it's not going out and searching the entire world of apps. Instead, they've identified apps that are educational, that align with their philosophy, and you can read about them. They'll tell you about their finding apps, etc. And then they're giving you a tool to narrow things down. This, to me, is where I go. I don't go to the big sites because I'm going to get lost in the amount of apps that are out there. Instead, I'm going to go to a tool like this that narrows things down. Let me go to another one. One that I really like for special needs is bridging apps. So bridging apps tends to be a little on the slow side, so we'll see if it pops up things up. Bridging apps offers a tool. It's created, and I can sign in, and I haven't signed in. I'm just going to go directly, and it looks like it's going to take a little while. But let me describe it, and then I'll move on. Maybe it'll pop up as I talk. Well, here we go. So notice bridging apps offers something similar to Kindertown, but so much more. So for example, up under age, yes, I can put in the age and the months, but generally when I put in the age and months here, by the way, I'm putting in the functional age. So if I'm thinking of Nolan when it comes to math, he's operating more at a second grader, so I'm going to put in those years because that's what I'm looking for. I could put in price in terms of what I'm looking for. I could put in skill level that they've identified. Now they're only looking at 3,254 apps. Notice I've just highlighted that at the top here of my screen. So they're not looking at the hundreds of thousands of apps out there. They've identified the fact that there's about 3,000 apps they think are really relevant for learning for individuals with disabilities. And then they've created a tool, an algorithm, to help you search their site for those apps. And there's a variety of different things, so let me minimize that. You can align it to the core, you can align it to grade level, you can align it to a mobile device, you can align it to category in terms of is it behavior emotion, is it fine motor. So it's a pretty cool tool to narrow things down. That's bridging apps, and that's just for special needs. Their site is just for special needs. Another site I really like is apps for children with special needs. Apps for children with special needs. So that's doing the, again, I know what I'm looking for. Oh, what's happened? Did I go to the wrong spot here? Give it a second here. Apps for children with special needs, and maybe he's changed his website. I doubt that. It's a bit of a busy site, but what I like about this site, and I'm not sure why it's being so slow, is that, let me put the www in front of it just in case. What he's done is he's created a site where he's reviewed apps with video. And so what I believe so strongly now, and it's been that way for several years now, is that I'm not going to download an app, and I'm not sure why it's taking so long, but at least let me mention the fact that what I want is I want to make sure I see the app before I download it. So I'm going to go to Apps for Children with Special Needs, or I'm going to go to YouTube or Vimeo, and I'm going to do a search for that app. And it may be a marketing site that is advertising the app. I'm fine with that as long as I can see the app in all its glory. So is it really busy? Is it too, is it offering visuals but no auditory? Is it a lot text heavy? Are the images having to be interpreted? All those things will play into my watching of it, and then I'll make a selection about, oh yeah, this is great. This does what I want it to do, and it has all the elements I need. But by watching, it's so critical. All right, so this is another site that offers blogs. It offers a tool to search for apps and a variety of other things. So here's iPads for special education. But there's a number of different things going on here at this site. It's called Spectronics. It's actually out of Australia. I bring it up because of all the different elements it has. So here it is, the top 10 apps for language development. They're all focused on special needs, and they'll do things about listing them. They'll give the price, etc. But it also gives the blog. And I can't emphasize enough how I like blogs and even following people on Twitter when I'm looking for apps. Why? Because people that are blogging about apps, they're doing it full-time, or at least they're putting a fair amount of part-time. People that are out there tweeting, they're tweeting about, hey, take a look at these apps, or hey, I'm focused on literacy for struggling learners. I just went to this conference and I learned about the following technology tools. It's great. I mean, Twitter's great. You can lurk, and it's socially acceptable. Well, Twitter anymore, social. Well, we won't go there. But anyways, but Twitter. The idea with Twitter though is I can follow somebody. I don't need to respond. I don't need to post anything, but I could learn from what they're sharing. And some folks out there are tweeting constantly about really neat innovations, and blogs as well. All right. I definitely have not given enough time for questions. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. Let me go back to that slide. This is where I have all the resources that I've begun to share, as well as I haven't had a chance to share. I hope I've connected a few dots in this conversation, and Vanessa, I'll bring it back over to you to see what questions we might have.
Well, the first comment is "wow!" exclamation point, and I think that about sums it up. This is a fantastic information, Sean. Thank you. And to answer some other questions that we've gotten already, yes, this information will be available later. Sean's PowerPoint as well as the video will be available on the NDSS website. We can all check back on this stuff. This has been really good content, so let's get a couple of questions in here before we have to log off. Let's see. Okay, we've got, hi, any apps for behavior support, specifically anything to operate within a classroom token economy?
So what I would suggest there is that, one, I have a few links up there, up in the Google Docs that are more behavioral inclined under the apps for special needs, so start there. But if you're not seeing them, or two, if that's not helpful, there's my email address. Feel free to email me. Seriously. And if I don't know the answer, I generally have someone I know I can put you in touch with. And the more specific you are on the email about what you're looking for, the better off I'll be. And most likely I'm not going to provide you that direct app. I'll probably provide you a resource like I'm discussing that will be able to allow you then to kind of narrow down your searches to find the apps you're looking for. But the simple answer is yes. The more complex is what I just rambled about, and that is connect with me and I'll get you a little bit more directed. And there's my email address.
Great. Okay, this is a good one. Based on your experience, how did you approach your son's teachers, administrators, or other IEP team members on these supports, and who supported implementation? We have assistive technology consult on my daughter's IEP, and I've tried to introduce some of these, but they seem unaware.
So that's an excellent question. And the answer is the following, in my opinion. First of all, what I've learned, and my son has had an AT consult as well, and honestly, that hasn't been as successful. What I've learned to be the success is what I was trying to share at the beginning, and that is what I did with Nolan is that Nolan has these challenges. You're telling me that he has these challenges. I'm seeing that he has these challenges. So early on, for example, reading. And so they were telling me in terms of, okay, so Nolan can't read this, Nolan can't read that. We have these limitations here. We have goals and benchmarks here. And so then with the group, and it was regular communication, I meet with, well now, when I was at elementary level, I met with his teacher every 3 weeks, if not more regularly. I would bring lunch during lunchtime. I would bring coffee before school. After school, I would bring cookies. So I always brought food. And I would meet and say, okay, so you guys are saying this is a challenge. And so it seems that we're not going to be able to get at this solution because we don't have enough time. Then it led us over to the technology conversation. I did a lot of reading. Yes, I happen to know a little bit about technology, but I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of searching, and then would come with a potential solution. But it was the same way with a non-technology solution, that maybe at home I was seeing behaviors that they were describing, and then I would look to what they were doing for behaviors, and then I would offer suggestions what we were doing for behaviors, and we would problem solve. We did the same thing with technology. I did have to invest in a computer for Nolan. We finally ended up getting a laptop. It cost about $1,200. We got a Mac. It was a light laptop. It was used, and it was a significant investment on our end, but we felt it was more important to get to the technology and then get them to use it. To get them to use it, we reinforced anything they were doing. We tried to bring it over to technology, and then we shared with them, like with everything from Google and anything in between. We tried to go with the technology we heard them talking about or what we were seeing with our other children, and then we tried to foster those technologies. We wanted to go with the comfort level they already had. If we couldn't come to that compromise, we would then introduce technologies, and we introduced it via email. We shared them websites. We shared them YouTube clips. I still do that today. I actually, in middle school in 6th grade several years ago, they actually said, Sean, just come in and teach us. And so I went in, and then after school, and I did an overview of one software. But in all honesty, that software, it was a YouTube. All I did was watch the YouTube, and I did the same thing YouTube did. I didn't use any of my expertise, in all honesty. It's just they didn't have the time. Those are some of the things we've done, and I've seen other peers do it. Communication, of course, as we all know, is the critical thing, and food. Food goes a long way.
All right, well, Sean, we have run out of time. I will let everybody know, though, that Sean has very generously agreed to put on a second presentation, a different presentation, next month. So you can check that out and register on the NDSS website, ndss.org. You'll be with us in February. And
I'll focus more on apps on that one too, Vanessa.
Great. That's great. And again, we'll post all of this on ndss.org. I will get it up ASAP. So please check that. Sean, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a great day. Bye.